Hey guys, welcome to the Transformer Lab. This is the first one. There's going to be two. The first one we're just going to wire up the transformer to have a 24 volt output, and in the second one we're going to wire it up to have a 12 volt output. Like the first part of it is pretty much going to be the same. The second part of it's going to be kind of different. So we're going to be wiring up the primary, like is going to be the same, and then wiring the secondary, or mainly putting in the bridges for doing the secondary, are going to be different on the 12 volt versus the 24 volt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this so you guys can get a really good image of what I'm trying to do, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to start putting in all those parts, and I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do, and then I'm going to zoom back out and I'm going to show you how to test it and how to submit this lab. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here's our transformer all up close. Now we have two sides. Depending on how your transformer is set up, you're going to have a primary side and then a secondary side. Ours, on this particular one, our primary is on the top and our secondary is on the bottom. What I'm going to do when we're actually starting to work with this is I'm going to flip it over, because I want my primary to be on the bottom for when I hook up my main connections into these. Typically there are some rules about the power needs to come in from the top, but because of the spacing, we're going to go ahead and flip this transformer and just have it on the bottom. But primary side usually is going to be the high voltage coming in, secondary will be the voltage coming out. So again, on ours, the secondary is on the bottom, or it's the lower voltage side. Notice that there are multiple connections up here. There's 8 on each side. These top ones are going to be used as like accessories, and this bottom one here is going to be the ones that are actually going to be used for moving the electricity, and I'll show you how they match up with the schematic here in a second. In the center, we're going to have all of our information about this transformer. You can see that there is a schematic, there's all the information about it, so anything you need to know. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in, and let's take a look at that schematic a little bit closer. So hopefully you guys can see this. If not, you should go grab yours and look at it while you're watching this video, so that way you can see what I'm pointing at. Notice that there is 2 high voltages that are coming into this one. So you can pick if you're going to have 120 volts coming in or 240 volts coming in. Now also notice that 240 isn't connected to 24 volt. Well, that's not like a requirement. So you could actually do 240 over here to 12 volt. It's just you're going to wire each side individually. So there's no like it has to be 240 to go to 24. That's not a rule. We can do 120 over to 24, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second when we're actually putting in the bridges and stuff. So what we can see is there's actually a bunch of little dots that are connected to terminals. Remember, there was 4 terminals on each side, and they're actually each numbered. Now you can notice that there's a thing called a bridge that's going in between those 2 dots. So the bridges, I'm going to try to show you this, are actually these little metal objects. It's kind of out of view, but these little metal objects are what's going to connect all the terminals together. And really all we need to know is how to look at this schematic and then connect those terminals. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and zoom out, and then I'm going to show you how to put the bridges in, and then we're going to go ahead and wire it up. So I'm going to wire mine for 120 volts, and that's saying I need a bridge that goes from terminal 1 to 2, and I need a bridge that goes from 4 to 3. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put those in, and I can see they have this kind of funky bump in the middle, and that actually fits over the ridge. So we can go ahead and slide these in place, and I try to make sure they're all the way slid down. I'm going to put them both in. All right, so you can see now I have my 2 bridges are in place, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crank those screws down. So you can actually see that the bridges are now shoved down in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten up those screws now, so that way that they're held tight. Now I may have tightened all 4 of these up, but when it comes down to it, when we put the wires on, we're actually going to need to loosen up number 4 and slide a wire in there, and number 1 and slide a wire in there, because you can actually see on the schematic right here, they have these wires coming in. See this wire coming down, and then again on the 240, coming down, and you can see they're connected to 1 and 4. So pretty much on this particular schematic, or this particular transformer, it's always going to be connected to 1 and 4, the wires are, that is. So on the schematic, it's telling me that I actually need to connect 3 and 2 together, so this guy and this guy need to be connected. So I'm just going to take my other bridge, I'm going to slip it up into here, hopefully it'll go in easy. Perfect. So now I've got that in there. I'm just going to tighten up the screws. This one's kind of lucky because we don't ever have to loosen it up. All right, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and flip this thing over, like I had said, because mine happens to be set up on the mount upside down, or just differently, I guess you could say. But yours might be set up so as to already be this way. So we can pop it off, and all we're going to do is actually flip it over. Now, while we're on the subjects of transformers, I wanted to put mine near this power block right here because the power is going to need to come from here into this. Then I can take my secondary voltage from up here and I can disperse it easily. And I feel like this is a good spot to put it. You're welcome to put this anywhere on the board you feel comfortable with, but I like this spot the best. All right. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to bring my 120 volts into my primary side over here. Remember, terminal 1 and 4, and I'm going to make sure that I use the correct colors of black and white. Now remember, on this particular trainer, our ground is actually grounded into the DIN rail, and the whole board is already grounded, so we don't need to be worrying about grounding on these particular labs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire, I'm going to come down into my railing, and then I'm going to bring it up into my terminal blocks. So let me grab that wire, and I'm going to be using a stranded wire for this. I believe it is a 14 gauge. So just make sure as you're going along you keep it nice and neat. No extra wires, no loops inside here or nothing like that. So looks like I cut a little bit extra. I'm just going to go ahead and strip those wires. You want to make sure your wires are in there nice and tight, so maybe give them a little bit of a tug. I'm going to jump it into the runway. I like to try to line it up as closely as I possibly can, and then I'm going to come up over, and I'm really just going to kind of push it into this one and see that I can get it to fit. I like to try to put a little bend on mine, just to try to kind of make it go exactly where I want. Go ahead and we can cut these a little bit shorter. Again, I'm going to loosen up my, I don't know if this is the number 4 terminal or the number 1. And I'm just going to put that wire, snake it in there. Maybe loosen up a little bit more. If you need to, you can pull this off the actual training board and wire it up and then put it back on, but it's up to you. And then you want to, again, make sure these wires are nice and tight in place, okay? All right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our neutral wire and we're going to go ahead and put it in and then bring it down and hook it into terminal, I think this one's number 4 over here. So it doesn't really matter which direction or which way you hook up these wires. It's not polarity sensitive. It can be hooked up to either one. So come down, bring it in. And again, I'm just going to figure out which one it lines up best with. Looks like that one's going to be the closest. Come up, twist it again. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and loosen up this terminal and feed it underneath there. Oops, may have done a little extra. All right. We're going to clean this up. So the last thing I want to do is I'm just going to try to fix my wires, make sure it looks nice and clean, and then I'm going to put my cover back on to these wires. Again, you will be graded on putting these in the runways because it is required from now on, or at least throughout this particular module, to make sure you use these runways, all right? So Now, what I can do is I now could just change the bridges on my secondary side to get the output voltage I want. But because I'm pretty much done with my primary, it could stay like this pretty much throughout this whole class, but you probably will have to take it off a few times. So just know this is how I want the primary side to look, all nice and clean, all nice, the colors are correct, and they're in the runway. So what we're gonna do to complete this lab and to complete the second activity will be to put our multimeter into the terminals, clamp them down, and then show the correct voltage that we are looking for. So I'm gonna grab multimeter, I'm gonna hook it up, put it on volts, and I'm gonna show you what the output voltage is. And then we're gonna switch the bridges around in the next activity, and I'm gonna show you what the output voltage is again. All right, so what I'd like to see is I want you to put your terminals or your connectors in here, and you might just take them and actually tighten them down so that they don't fall out. Just grab your screwdriver and do a little bit of a cinch. They don't have to be super tight, just so that they can't move around, okay? So for the submission, we're just gonna go get a reading off of the face here. I want it to say 12 volts. You could just take a picture, but again, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna unlock my trainer because I didn't want to get electrocuted while I was doing all this. I'm gonna go ahead and flip it on, and then we should be able to see something as soon as we hit the AC. Yep, okay. So you can see on my face that I have 24 volts or 25.64 volts. And it is typical for a transformer to be a little bit heavy on some of that voltage. So typically a little bit over a volt or so is okay, and as soon as it starts dropping below, you're going to start having some problems. So again, what I'd like to see for your submission is a picture taken of your trainer with the multimeter next to it, with the leads connected in the correct placing, and a bridge, and I want to be able to see that bridge, okay? So go ahead and complete this lab. Let me know if you guys need any help or have any questions. Should be around to help you out.